So you want to start working on the 204R. Well, that's great because these transmissions are, if nothing else, very interesting and actually rewarding in their own ways to work on, but you should also know that they are very, very nuanced and also very specialty tool intensive. More so than pretty much any other GM transmission of its era. Much more so than 700R4, 4L60Es, 4L80Es. I mean, you really don't get into the amount of specialized tooling that you need for this transmission, anything comparable, until you start getting into some of the real late stuff, the 6 speeds, the 8 speeds, and so forth. So I want to go over all the different tools that are organic to this transmission, and I'll also cover some workarounds or viable substitutes in the event you can't get your hands on the specific tool. So I have them laid out here from left to right in kind of the order in which you would use them in if you were assembling the transmission, you know, starting from the rear and working your way to the front, which is how most of you would assemble it anyway. So first tool I'll talk about is going to be your output shaft support tool and support tool bracket and adjusting screw combination. So that's these two tools right here. Alright, so this is going to be Kentmore J29332, and this is going to be Kentmore J25013-1. So these two tools work in combination with each other and will enable you to support the output shaft and ring gear rear planet as you lower them into the case while you build up the gear train, because unlike pretty much every other GM transmission, at least the ones that I work on, where they are supported by simply placing them into the case with the case vertical via the case, you know, either the rear case itself or some other surface area. The 204R has what I call a floating rear gear train assembly, meaning that there is nothing to support the gear train with the transmission in place until you have the entirety of the gear train installed and the snap ring that gets installed on the front of the output shaft that goes immediately in front of the selective spacer. So until you install everything else, including that spacer and the snap ring, there's nothing supporting the gear train in the case. So you would bolt this to the rear transmount location bolt holes using these bolts that are supplied. Okay, and I'll flash the thread pitch on the screen, so if you have this tool or you want to fabricate your own, you'll know at least what kind of bolt sizes or thread pitches you need. Then what would happen is, and I'll show it like this, what would happen is you would have this installed. So once this is bolted, okay, you adjust your forcing screw roughly in the middle like this, and then you would drop this down through the barrel of the case, right through the bushing in the seal, and let it come to rest just like this. Okay. Now the sleeve itself has a couple of features that you need to know about. First, there's going to be a set screw here on the inner portion way at the bottom. It's a 3/8 set screw, and that adjusts the travel of this little plunger. Okay, so you have an ID groove here, and what you want to do is adjust that set screw so that when you have the bracket installed and you have the adjustment screw there, you know, coming into contact with the bottom of the plunger, you can adjust it such that this indexing groove passes just out of view, just on the inside of the diameter here of the main sleeve. That will get you approximately where you need to be from an output shaft height perspective in relation to the rest of the transmission case. So substitutes or alternatives, I would say this should be fairly easy for someone who's handy to make, you know, a tool of their own. So this is just simply a piece of sheet steel that's bent in a 90-degree manner, just like this, and then of course you have a hole drilled and tapped for a forcing screw. The sleeve itself is literally just that, a sleeve and a plunger with a spring inside of it. Do you need the spring? Probably not. So if you're able to get some, you know, tubular DOM steel and, you know, get yourself a plunger like this, you know, something else, then you can make this yourself. Okay, the next tool I'll talk about is going to be the low reverse lifting tool. It's a two-part deal, just like the last one. So you're going to have the main body, which is Kentmore J28542. Okay, it consists of a plunger and an expander, along with the sleeve and a collet at the end to grab the low reverse support. And then you're going to have J28542-2, and this is a locking collar. So what you would do is you would position the locking collar just like this. You would have your plunger pulled all the way out, and then you would grab your assembled low reverse support and install it just like this. Then you will go ahead and collapse your plunger and cranking it over, turning it so that it locks in place, and then secure your locking collar so that you have, a 100% solid purchase on this thing. And then from there, you just simply lower it into the case so that you can manipulate it a little bit to allow these splines to mesh with the splines on the outer race for the low roller assembly that sits at the top, or in the top of the rear planet. Okay, so I'll obviously put some video footage in the upper left or upper right hand corner so that you can actually see the tool in action, because it's probably hard to visualize with just me describing it, but that is how you use this tool. So once you have your low reverse snap ring installed, then you'll just want to disengage the locking collar, unlock, and then push upward, and that will allow you to take the tool out so that you can continue with the gear train assembly. Okay, next tool we'll discuss is going to be the lifting tool for the forward drum. So this is going to be Kentmore J29337. It's basically a blind hole puller collet style tool. How it works is you have the forward and direct drums meshed together, and then you have your intermediate shaft with the pilot bushing. This collet here will engage the pilot bushing, and then this will allow you to lock everything in place. So you install it, you make sure you're fully engaged, and then you turn counterclockwise on this knob, and that will allow this collet to expand and grab the bushing. And then you'll go ahead and use the locking collar so that it forces it hard and fast, nice and tight, up against the direct drum. Then it's stable, and you just lower the drum assembly into place. Now, once you have the center support installed, you're going to need to measure your drum travel between the gear train and the back of the center support. So you would again attach this tool, then you would undo and kind of make loose the locking collar so that you can move the drums up and down. You'll mount a dial indicator, and you will measure the travel. The travel needs to be between 15 and 25 thousandths of an inch from where it's at rest position on the gear train to where it's up against the center support, and that's the direct drum. So as far as viable substitutes, again, it's kind of the same deal. If you can fabricate using a long enough or small enough blind hole puller, because it has to be both long enough, right, to secure the pilot bushing, and it has to be small enough in diameter so it'll fit. And you can kind of pair that with some sort of tightening mechanism that also has a flat surface that will allow you to mount a dial indicator plunger to it and be stable. Then you can work your way around purchasing this tool. Alright, the next set of tools I'll talk about are the Teflon sealing ring installer and sizers. So we have two different ones here. This one is going to be Kentmore J38736-7. This is what I use for all my Teflon sealing rings for the 204R center support. And I use 4L80E Teflon rings for those, for anything real high performance, or really as often as I could. Because the cast rings, the steel ones that come from the factory, they wear out the inner diameter of the direct drum really aggressively. So whenever you can, use Teflon sealing rings. So you'll size the sealing rings with this tool, and it's the same tool that you're going to use for the 4L80E or TH400 center support, for those Teflon rings, as well as if you want to install those same rings onto the TH400's pump stator, you'll use the same tool as well. Okay, the next tool is going to be used for the one-piece Teflon sealing ring on the input shaft, and that is going to be the two-part deal. So you have the sizer, which is J29696-2, and then you have the installation tool, or expander if you want, is going to be J29696-1, you know, whatever you want to call it, expander, installer. I actually did not use these tools when I did the build up of the 204R that's on the channel, and that's because I literally forgot that I even had them. You do not need them. You do not need this. So a very effective workaround that's arguably even more effective than the tools themselves are going to be the hose clamp and rubber segment methods. So any hose clamp of appropriate size and diameter in combination with a little rubber segment here or swatch will size whatever Teflon sealing ring and whatever transmission that you're working on. And like I said, it is arguably even better than the tool specifically made for that task. So the rubber sheets that I use are going to be made by this company called Matnix. It's available on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description, but it's basically a 6x6 by 1/16 of an inch thick sheet. And there's 3 of them in this pack. You can order a single sheet, you can order a pack of 3, and I think there's other options available. But the bottom line is that this solution is vastly more cost effective than trying to hunt down these specialty sizers. I think this kit was like 11 or maybe 12 bucks, and then, you know, what does a hose clamp cost? Like 50 cents, $1. So a much more efficient solution. As long as the sealing ring isn't, I don't know, like, and I'm just speaking generally here, as long as the sealing ring is not in such a manner or design that this won't work, you need some sort of specialty sizer, I don't know of any like that, this will work for any transmission that has the one-piece Teflon sealing rings that need resizing after installation. Okay, I will briefly talk about the snap ring pliers. So the center support snap ring has, you know, little eye loops where you can engage, and you can use the pliers to remove and reinstall. I'll be honest with you, I don't use these, at least not for the 204R. You can if you want. The part number for this, these are blue points, and it's going to be PR07. For the 204R, all you need is a couple of flat blade screwdrivers that don't have grooves on the blade, and a decent sized hammer. I mean, that's basically it. You just take the hammer, get it secured, positioned on one of the ends where the snap ring is, and then you give it a good smack. That will pop one of the ends out, and then take another screwdriver to get in behind it to prevent it from going back in, and then just carefully work it out of the groove. I mean, that's basically all you need to do. And then to reinstall it, just use a long flat blade screwdriver, index it so that the ends of the snap ring are at roughly 180 degrees out from the area of the parking pole, or, you know, that left, that channel where the parking rod assembly goes on the right side of the case, and you're done. So, I mean, they're great snap ring pliers, you just don't need them for the 204R. Alright, the last specialty tool here on the bench is another 2-part deal, and this is going to be your overdrive clutch return spring compressor. So this will allow you to remove and reinstall the snap ring for for that assembly. So the compressor itself is going to be J29334-1, and the bridge with the forcing screw is going to be J29334-2. So very simple deal. How this works is, with the case kind of right here, assuming at the 6 o'clock position, you're going to use 2 bolts, and I'm using bolts in combination with like these nuts and washers, and I don't think these bolts actually came with this tool, so use whatever bolts and washers you want. But it's going to go at the pump the case bolt hole locations, roughly the 8:30 and 2:30 position relative to the 6 o'clock position, i.e. the belly of the case. Okay, you're going to position the compressor first onto the return spring, and you want it just like this, so that you have the ends of the snap ring positioned here, and then this will compress the return spring in combination when you crank down on that forcing screw. and then you can get whatever snap ring pliers to secure the spring into, or excuse me, secure the snap ring into the groove and hold the spring down in place. Okay, you want to make sure that that spring is fully seated. When you look at it, even when it's installed, it almost looks like it's about to pop out. I'm not crazy about the design. I don't think that groove is deep enough, but that's just my opinion. I've never had one pop out on me, so it's probably more of me being, you know, overly, I guess, apprehensive about it unnecessarily. But anyway, that's how you use that tool. Now, you can remove the snap ring on teardown without this tool. All you need to do is take a flat blade screwdriver, you know, kind of tap on the end of the ring to get it out, and then just, you know, carefully work its way all the way around until it's fully removed. But to install it, you're going to need this or something like it, and this is fairly easy to fabricate, you know, if you're handy and you have the materials and the skills and the tooling. So that is 204R specialty tools, and these are all tools that are organic to the 204R. I mean, you obviously need things like dial indicators, feeler gauges, you know, magnetic bases, torque wrenches, you know, things of that nature. But and you also will need some sort of clutch spring compressor tools for the drums, and any other, you know, normal transmission building tool that you would use, bushing drivers, etc. There is a couple of specific 204R bushing drivers, so, you know, I completely spaced on that. Let me get them out of the drawer and I'll show them to you. The bushing driver in question is going to be Kentmore J25019-9, and I have it paired with Kentmore J42183. So this driver is going to install bushings onto the overdrive planet, the front ring gear, and the rear planet. And so the outer step portion here is going to work with the bushings on the rear planet and the overdrive planet, while the inner step is going to install the bushing that goes into the front ring gear. So it's perfectly sized dimensionally in every respect to install all three of these bushings exactly to the proper depth, and at the same time square the bushing in the bore. So totally spaced on the fact that I had this bushing driver. Did not have it on the bench initially, so I wanted to make sure I got it into this video. But anyway, that is the specialty tool set for the 204R. If you're going to work on these transmissions, even if you're only going to work on it once or twice, you're going to want to make sure that you have either these tools or viable substitutes so that you appropriately mitigate your procedural risk when putting this transmission together. Because like I said, these are very nuanced, very finicky, and they require a lot of specialized tooling and at the same time a lot of focus when going back together with it. So these tools will help you mitigate the at least the procedural risk so that you can focus on other important aspects of building this transmission. Alright, if you have any questions, comments, go ahead and leave them below. I appreciate you watching as always. Thank you so much. There'll be a lot of 204R videos, a complete playlist, so if you're getting into this transmission for the first time, you can leverage those videos in addition to this one to help you with your project.